Today on the podcast, we have Paula Hayes. And she's a science geek, she's a fiddler, a tinker, she's a chemist. She's a go-getter, and on top of that, she has that entrepreneurial spirit in her blood. And from our conversation, it was just really, really great to hear somebody talk about going from STEM to intersecting that into her brand and what she's doing with her life and creating opportunities for that. She has a cosmetics brand and has a manufacturing company. She has her stuff in stores. When the coronavirus hit, she not only didn't shut down, but she shifted gears and started making hand sanitizers because she's a chemist. And so the combination of keeping people working, keeping people's lights on, creating opportunities for others, really finding her voice and staying true to that was really an inspiring conversation. And so, without further ado, let's listen to Paula Hayes. First and foremost, thanks for agreeing to be on the podcast, and I hope everything is going well with you now that we are getting closer and closer to locking down even more.
Right? I know. Well, I'm happy I could find the time today, and I don't know, I guess my philosophy to everything that's going on is control the controllables. That's all I can do. So I'm just plugging forward until I get to a point where I can't plug anymore.
Oh yeah, definitely. I feel like every time I wake up, I'll hop on Twitter to get my daily news feed, and it becomes more increasingly like real. I think today they just postponed the Summer Olympics to next year.
Yeah.
And so so it's like, wow, this is really where we're at right now.
Yeah, you're right. For so long, it has felt kind of surreal. And I think, for me, I felt like the moment I start to digest what's going on, it would change yet again.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'm getting more comfortable with the idea that it's going to consistently change, or like you said, it's just kind of maybe the other idea is that we're just facing the reality, and that there's some things like postponement of an Olympics, even though that seems like it's far enough off that, we just got to factor that's just the way it's going to have to be for everyone's health and safety. So it is what it is.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the things I've started to think about more and more is, as an entrepreneur, as a quote unquote millennial or whatever, this stuff like this becomes the new normal. You kind of grow accustomed to markets changing, things going in and out of style, and really the only thing you can control is how you adapt to it.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. That was a lesson that an early mentor of mine taught me as I was beginning my career, because I was, like everyone, I was anxious. I had ideas. If I came up with an idea, I wanted to see it executed now. I don't understand why things have to take so long. And he really just got me comfortable with the idea that, for one, it's about controlling the controllables. Two, the way that you continue to move forward in an environment like that is it's really important to get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And that, to me, speaks to what you're saying, just about, the new norm is getting used to all these things changing around you and having to shift and adjust. So he also taught me, being adaptable and flexible will be your best friend in all this.
Oh,
so,
yeah, definitely.
It's worked as an entrepreneur, for sure.
Yeah, and for me, I played 6 years of football in college. I overcame a whole bunch of different injuries and stuff, but really, it's that adaptability. When the climate changes, when your role changes, when your resources change, the thing that really can't change too much is really the drive that you have for doing what you do.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I love that.
Yeah. And so talk a little bit about like what you do right now.
Yeah. So I think at the core of it, which is something I've been thinking about a lot, especially over these last few weeks, is I am a product development chemist. That's what I started my career doing. I'm a science geek who loves to fiddle and make things, and I'm always curious about how things are made, and I ended up, I guess, building a career out of it. So right now, and as you know, as far as I can see for quite a long distant future, I'm the founder CEO of Hue Noir. We are a cosmetic brand, but we're a little bigger than that. We're also a cosmetic manufacturing company.
Okay.
I started this with the intention of building my own product line, and on the side, I do a little bit of contract manufacturing, product development for other companies if they're ready to, really pursue a product and launch it. And yeah, so that's what I do.
Okay. Yeah, that's really interesting because typically when you hear about somebody that's really, really interested in science, um, you tend
Mhm.
to the first things that will come to mind is like, oh, you want to be a doctor, or
Yeah.
you like botany or something like that. Like very rarely uh, do you hear about opportunities of people taking that interest and going into product manufacturing.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not the typical thing that you see. And I'm actually over here smiling because, when I started off, I declared my major in college on day one.
Oh,
I knew I
dang.
wanted to be a biology major, and I ended up being a chemistry minor. But if you had asked me what I was going to do with that, I didn't realize all the options out there. So I would have told you I was going to be a doctor.
Yeah.
And I think I kept that up all the way until my senior year of college, the maybe even last semester when I just took a hard look at myself and said, "Who are you fooling? You have no interest in becoming a doctor." But I love the reaction back then that I got when I said that to people because honestly I didn't know what else I could do with my science degree besides go into research. It was research or be a doctor. But that also wasn't my personality, so I was just determined to find a way to take this love and fascination that I had for science and to figure out how to do something with it that made me happy. And I ended up in product development
Interesting.
and learned a whole other side. And it's been a lot of fun.
Huh. So, as the pre-med in me, it's like, how did you feel about OChem?
You know what? Honestly, OChem was not my favorite nor my best subject. It's funny, right? Because everything I do is OChem.
Yeah.
And I can tell you when I first started working, the first time I developed my first formula and I started off as an R&D chemist. I remember distinct moments when like an epiphany happened, and I kind of looked up and said, "Oh, that's what they were trying to teach me in OChem." Well, if they had taught it this way, I would have had no problem with it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm because I took the MCAT twice, and one of the
Mm,
things that I grow to learn was that I really enjoyed OChem and I was really good at it. I was not good at biology,
yeah.
but
Ah,
the MCAT is mostly bio and biochem, and you might find maybe two or three questions out of like 200 on OChem. And so it's like,
yeah, that's fun.
it's funny that you say that. Like most of the stuff that you deal with is OChem, where in the field that I'm
Yep.
going into, I won't need OChem for anything unless I'm going into pharmacology.
True. Very true. Very true. And it's funny because I think some people think I don't need much biology, but there's actually much more biology to what I do than people think. So it actually is it's a really interesting cross section between the two.
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like I'm about to geek out with you here,
Oh
but
yeah.
yeah, it's a really interesting
Hey, all you have to do is just drop some biochem buzzwords, man. That's all it takes. Yeah, but so where did you go to school?
I went to Lewis and Clark College
Okay.
here in
Oh,
Portland.
nice,
That's where I
nice.
did my undergrad. Yeah.
Okay.
Did not grow up in the area, and honestly didn't know a whole lot about Portland. But I fell in love with the school. They had a really strong biology program. And even though I grew up in LA, I went to a small Catholic school. And for me, honestly, the idea of going to a really big school, it was just too daunting of a concept for me. And I happened to take a closer look at Lewis and Clark, and I ended up liking the Portland area. And so I came up here for school, went back down there to start my career, but I ended up back here in Portland anyway.
Okay, okay. And what was really that like? What was the driving force that kind of like settled the deal for you coming back after you already left?
Well, it actually was love. No, it was more the idea that so I moved back to LA to start my career, and honestly, I wanted to stay. I had developed a strong network of friends. One of my best friends lives here, and just people that I grew really close to. But I really struggled to find a job as a new biology major coming out of college here back when I graduated. So I moved home, started my career, fell in love, got married, had kids, had kind of been pursuing my career. Started raising a family, and just kind of wanted something different than LA for my kids, especially my two black boys growing up in LA, i.e. South LA. I just didn't want that for them.
Yeah.
Um, and my husband and I started talking about where else we might want to live. I told him I could always live in Portland. He asked me Portland, Maine. I said Portland, Oregon. Um, he had never been up here, but I brought him up to visit, and he kind of liked the area. And then along came a recruiter with like literally the perfect job fit for him about a year after that at Nike. And 2 months after that, we were making plans to move here.
Oh wow.
So we've been here now. Yeah, we've been here now 13 years. It's hard to believe,
Oh
but
wow. Yeah.
it's been a great place for us and our family. So this is home.
Nice, nice. Yeah, it's ever increasingly, all the people that I start talking to, it always starts with just an opportunity. Uh,
Yeah.
Albeit, I'm from the Bay Area, and so I, when I finished playing football at Oregon State, I left Corvallis, came down to,
Yeah.
I was living in LA, then I went back to Richmond, and then I was just like, I need other opportunities because
Yeah.
California, just like where I'm from, there's just like slim to none, and it's just a different climate. And so when I got up here,
Yeah.
it was just I kicked myself like in the foot, like being up here for like 6 months and just baffling at how much I was able to get done uh, in that 6 month
Yeah.
period, opposed to being back at home. And I was just like, dang.
Yeah. Yeah, I can kind of relate to that. And I remember telling my husband, and a lot of it was just from my early experience here during my college years, that, it was, there's enough of a metropolitan area to feel like, of course we had everything we needed and wanted, and there were enough opportunities. But I also felt like, especially compared to LA, it was just a much easier place to network and meet people and, like you said, accomplish things. And so, all that's kind of proven to be true. I don't know if everyone feels that way, but that's been my experience for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I think you were fortunate enough to come with your family, and you have that sort of like stable dynamic. But a lot of
Yeah.
people that I talk to, me being one of them, it
Mhm.
was I found it pretty difficult at first to sort of like meet new black people and sort of like feel at home in my new home.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah. Yeah.
quite often I run into people that be like, "Man, where's the black people at? I've gone 2 months without seeing another black face." I'm like, "Dang."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it
Yeah. Yeah. I was also fortunate, like I said, to come back and already have friends in the area from my college years.
yeah.
Um, and that made a difference too. So I felt like I had a bit of a community, and particularly I remember mentioning to my husband that I wanted to make sure that we didn't just get caught in a bubble, because I do feel like Portland can be siloed, right? And if
Yeah.
you're always over on the west side, over by Nike, you don't experience things that are going on in other parts of the greater metropolitan area and making those connections and circles around. So I guess I wanted us to be really conscious of that. And some of that just came from, having that experience before. And like I said, being fortunate enough to come back and still have friends who live here, who I could call on for anything, who were here as a resource.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. It's like a blessing and a curse when you have the opportunity to work for one of those companies, because they provide you all the resources to be successful at your job, because it helps them.
Yeah.
But on the flip
Mhm.
side, I'm thinking about this because my dad used to work for Facebook, and and he would always laugh at the fact that, like, you could literally live there, and
Yeah.
you'll have all the resources and you could do everything and be successful. But the catch is that if you live there, then you pretty much are siloed from the rest of the world. And so quite
Yeah.
often you have
Sure.
to just leave work and kind of go out into the real world to, experience life.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I can relate to that.
Yeah. And so one of the things that I'm like really, really curious about is, so
Mhm.
would you say that you're in the entrepreneurship space at this point? You're using your skills and you're using your creativity, and you're kind of pushing the envelope forward in the I mean in the entrepreneurship space.
Yes, all day, every day. That is my world. I mean, I've always been a bit entrepreneurial, to be honest with you. And my mom was an entrepreneur, so I don't know. I felt like I grew up with a really interesting mix, right? I loved science. I loved the technical side. My dad was an accountant, but my mom was super artistic, and she was an entrepreneur, and she ran her own design firm, and so I've always had that around me. So I always had ambitions and the idea that I could do my own thing. And, I could have been very, very, very comfortable. I had a really comfortable career working as a product development chemist. I got to work on a lot of projects for very prominent companies. I got to the point by the time I was in my mid 20s, I could go to the store and see products sitting on the store shelf that I had worked on for the last year or two.
Oh wow.
But there was something in me that was far more curious, because I remember coming back to the lab and saying, okay, that's cool, but how did the product get from the concept of, that company gave me to us getting it through the whole development process, wrapping it up for production? There was this white space for me between that and it sitting on the store shelves. And I remember saying, I want to know how it got there. And it was at that point that I was secure enough in what I was doing as a developer that I just wanted more. So my company helped me by paying for me to get an MBA,
Okay.
and
Wow.
because I wanted to know the business side. And so, I worked as a chemist during the day, went to school at night, and I got to the point where I started to outgrow them. And by then I had an inkling that I wanted to do my own thing. I was getting tired of making other people's products. So that was really the impetus for what I do now. And the reason why I chose cosmetics and makeup is because, they're products that I love. They're products that I use. I recognize the struggles that I've had with them, whether it be from a color standpoint or it be from a product formula standpoint, it not being right for me or my skin tone or all the various things. And honestly, I got to a point in my career where I got tired of walking into stores, seeing products that I worked on for other companies, but still struggling to get what I wanted in this particular space. And makeup is a pretty complex part of beauty product development. It's a space that a lot of people do not want to touch. And I always remember saying, whenever a fellow product development person on the cosmetic side would say to me, "Oh, but that's so hard. Color cosmetics is so hard." I used to always ask why. Why is it so hard? And I wanted to explore that, and I wanted to figure out why, and I wanted to understand the market. And so all that really led to what I'm doing, and I decided to take that and launch my own venture. So you asked whether or not, I use it on the entrepreneurial side, and that's why I said all day, every day, because most people who do or have a company like mine, to say to have the brand, most of them don't do their own product development. They go to a contract manufacturer. The contract manufacturer says, "Great, you want to start a makeup line? Here are our offerings. It's typically one or two different formulas. Here are our colors. Here's the catalog. Pick what you want. We'll put your logo on it. And that's not what I'm doing. I'm fundamentally taking a different approach to my industry. But I also think it gives me a lot of flexibility to move and maneuver and to be adaptable and flexible in this space, because the retail game has changed so dramatically over the last few years. And now you look at a situation like we're in now with a pandemic, and I can tell you this industry is greatly, greatly affected. But I really think that me using my entrepreneurial background has set us up so that I can be flexible and adaptable and continue to move even under difficult circumstances for the betterment of my company. And I think we'll be okay. We'll make it. So, yeah, I'm definitely an entrepreneur.
Oh yeah, and just as you were speaking, I see so many sort of like powerful things because as a creator myself, every time I walk into like a comic book store, I see inspirations and things that I like, but I also see sort of the flaws and the holes in it. And
Yeah.
I have the wherewithal and I have the luxury to create that stuff that I see that I see gaps and holes in. But with you,
Yeah.
I know, going with my girlfriend or going with my mom or my sisters and going to the store and them being frustrated and not being able to find the right thing for them, and they can't really do anything about it.
Yeah.
It's such a, I think it's such a, an amazing thing to hear you talk about how you're able to go in and you could see and you could pinpoint these things, but then you also have the flexibility and the freedom and the resources to leave your stamp or at least change it for other people. And that, I mean, that's something that money can't buy. you know
Yeah. Yeah. True. Thank you. Yeah, I agree.
like it's
Fun.
like how does it feel to have, yeah, like how does it feel to kind of be in that position where you can you know create things that other people can use and really like inject into their lives?
Hmm. So it's interesting you asked me that question of all days today, because I'm humbled. And the reason why I say I'm humbled is because it's, I don't know, it's pretty easy. It's fairly easy for me to figure out formulations, especially behind personal care products and even everything down from food, beverage, and cosmetics. That's kind of like ingrained in me. But to be able to do that to make a difference for people is, I think, the most gratifying. So the reason why I say humble today is because 2 weeks ago, when it might have just been 2 weeks ago, it felt like a lifetime ago, when we first started to hear, a little bit more urgency around this pandemic, and Oregon seeing its first cases. And I remember going out that first weekend to shop, and remember that first week, like everyone started hoarding, and you just couldn't find anything.
Yeah.
And I could not get hand sanitizer to save my life. And I said, oh, that's okay. I've got bottles in the lab, and it's a fairly easy formula. I looked at an ingredient statement at least 50 million times because I read every ingredient statement.
Okay.
And so I came back to the lab, and I know it's this weird, quirky thing that I do because I just understand them. So I've seen those formulas forever. I've seen at least the ingredient statements, and I could figure out pretty quickly how to put together a formula. So I came back to the lab, and I made my first batch, and then I, adjusted it because I wanted it to be a little bit more thicker gel, and I added some fragrance, and I took it home and, gave it to, I have little bottles, gave it to my husband and kids and said, okay, great. You don't have to worry about going out trying to find hand sanitizer. And then as the weeks have gone on, I decided, you know what? If I'm struggling, everyone else is struggling. I know that people are turning their attention towards essential products right now, and this is something that people need. So I decided about a week and a half ago that, you know what, I can resource the materials. I'm going to start making some hand sanitizers just like an offer for my customers and people locally. And so I was all set to do that about a week ago. And, everything's coming in and my raw materials are here, and I'm getting ready to have my guy who does most of my batch work start batching. And then I got a call from a girlfriend who works at a correctional facility, and and it's a juvenile center, and she still has to go in and see kids and, make sure that they're okay, and she needed hand sanitizer. Then I heard from someone else who works in sanitation, and he needed hand sanitizer. And then I heard from a few more people, and then word started to get out. And now I'm looking at potential contracts with a couple of the local hospitals.
Oh, wow.
And I've already heard from the city and I've heard from other people. And I see just what a dire situation that is. And the idea that, of course, I do not think I can fill all that need, but just to be able to play a little bit of a role to be able to give people something that is, really important right now while people try to continue on in their day-to-day life as best as they can in this situation. It's humbling to know that I have the skill and the ability and even the resources to do that. So I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, like it creates a new opportunity if you see the opportunity and you seize on it. Because I just got apparently they have Oregon Live. They send you like text messages and stuff based on like all the current events. And so one of the things that they did was they talked about two stories. One is how movie theaters and stuff are like greatly impacted because obviously people can't go to the movies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But then they also talked about one of the more popular strip clubs who actually started a delivery service for some of the workers and the bouncers and stuff that they have. And so, they still have the kitchen open, but they now shifted their model from having people come to them to having their workers go to other people to deliver food. And so I was like, that's instead of panicking,
Innovation.
it's innovation. Like that's innovation is exactly what it is. And so it's great to kind of hear that sort of story from you, where you're not shutting down, you're just adapting.
Yeah. I'm adapting for a while, and honestly, this was for the last year and a half. I love making the kind of products we make, but I have been looking at expanding our product line to carry more essential and maybe skincare and things like that. And I said, well, I've always said, yeah, I'll get to that one day, but here's my entry. It's maybe not the date that I, thought in the future, but it's an opportunity for me to support my community and to continue to move my business forward at the same time. So it works.
And so with everything, how is this? Because I know you mentioned that you've kind of shifted gears, but how has this kind of impacted the day-to-day stuff that you typically do?
Oh, well, yeah. Like everyone, we've been greatly impacted. So we started to see rumblings of something going on in the greater, marketplace that we're in. Honestly, I want to say back in January, because we started to see slowdowns from suppliers from, for all the componentry that go into our sort of products, right? And the majority of that is not made in the U.S. The majority of it is made in China. So that started to be really interesting. And it started to impact companies like mine enough that major retailers that I deal with, where they were reaching out just to make sure we could still provide product, because it seemed like other companies in our space were starting to struggle. And so because of that, I've had my eye on this for, at least the last couple of months. But as time went on, I really started to see a shift in the buying patterns of my retailers. They were kind of putting things on hold, and that's pretty hard when you're, doing your forecasting and trying to figure out not only revenue but production schedule. I've got staff and people to take into consideration. So things started to slow down for us, and that's when I again started just looking at, all right, so things are going to slow down, so let me look at adjusting my model for this year. And then obviously, like 3 weeks ago, it was the reality, like, yeah, you're not just adjusting your model, you guys are going to be doing this very, very, very differently. So I actually put a little bit of a pause on a lot of our activity just to kind of help me get our bearings. And, the hard part for me is it's not just me, right? So when I'm deciding to make an adjustment or change, it's not like I'm, just myself personally deciding to turn and go into another direction. I've got to bring staff members along for the ride. And sometimes that is easier said than done. So trying to get people to understand and to be flexible and adaptable and to move along with me can take a little longer, than maybe sometimes I'd like. So I've been working on that for the last few weeks, but I think we're getting our footing and we're finding a new norm. And a couple of people who are normally here in the office with me are at home, and I decided to adjust, or at least halt production for about a week so I could figure out a new normal, because I want to make sure everyone can be safe and healthy and maintain social distancing. So it started to make me think differently about our whole process flow for a product. So, we're adjusting here, and then you add all that, you take that and you throw in the mix that I throw in a new product and I'm teaching my compounder how to make a new product. I'd say my team has been pretty good, all considering. So we're moving forward, and I feel like people are starting to get their footing a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. I think, we're past that sort of mass hysteria, or hopefully we're past the whole mass hysteria part, and it's starting to become more of a new normal for a lot of people. This really, really reminds me, because I primarily work from home as a freelancer, and so one of the things that I remember is when I first started working remotely, really having that balance between like where you live and where you work, and
Yeah.
understanding, having very particular feelings about
Yeah.
like being a little angsty, feeling like you're trapped, and feeling like you can't really get away from your work when you're working in your bed or in your living room, and really finding that balance between it. And so
Yeah.
I like looking from like being in this space or being in this situation for about 5 or 6 years, hearing people complain on Facebook and stuff about how they need to like do push-ups and go for a run or do something to get some work done. It's like, yeah, I know exactly how that feels.
Yeah. Yeah, adjustments for sure.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And so because you have employees, and because you
Hmm.
are somewhat, I wouldn't say, oh yeah, I guess you're responsible for a lot of people's employment, and other people making money. Like, how
Hmm.
is it stressful when you're in these situations, because you have not only your livelihood riding on it, but you also have other people's livelihood riding on it.
Oh yeah. It is stressful, and to me, it's stressful in general. Even when things are going good, because I don't know. I guess because I care, right, and I care about the people that I employ, and I want to be a good employer, and I want to do the best we can. But I'm also a small business, so I can't always provide everything that I want to. I just try to do right by people, and part of that doing right by people, yeah, is a profound sense of responsibility, and knowing that they're at least a portion, if not all of their livelihood in terms of income comes from working for me. So, yeah, I mean, I feel a great sense of and need to make sure that we're going to be okay, not just I'm going to be okay. So I do what I have to do, and I pivot as I have to pivot. And I guess I've gotten a little bit more comfortable with it as the years have gone on. I'd say the first 5 years, I was really flying solo and just using a lot of contractors. I still use contractors as much as I can, and I still try to keep my employment numbers as low as I can. I don't have a lot of staff members, and I bring on contractors and temps as I need them, just because you know I do that because I want to make sure that if I am bringing someone on to work here, that I am definitely able to support them.
Yeah.
So I can't afford. I'm not a large company. I can't afford a lot of fluff. And sometimes in small companies the dollars are tight, and you don't have as much room for error. So I'm going to be really certain that this work cannot be spread among maybe 2 or 3 people before I bring another person on, just because I am very conscious of that responsibility. Very conscious.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's something that people tend to overlook, especially when you
Yeah.
get to this point where you're striving, and you finally get to that point where you're a quote unquote boss, and then
Yeah.
you have to deal with sort of the consequences of having that role, where
Yeah.
you have to have the foresight of like, you can't
Mhm.
overhire, you can't underhire, you
Yep.
have to be calculated in your decisions. And so
Yeah.
what has been sort of your resource navigating this? Because at least right now there's no rule book. There's no rule book for how to get through the corona. And so just like I understand that like you went and you did your MBA. Like, did that sort of
Mhm.
prepare you for this, or at least like kind of shape your mindset in a way that has been beneficial?
Maybe, and I right. So in MBA school, right, you learn all about running an operation and things like that. So, I mean, from the standpoint of making sure I'm not over hiring or under hiring, and making sure financially I can support it, and understanding the rules as it pertains to employment law, and what I can do, what I can't do, what I have to offer, what the things that are optional. I mean, all that came with the learning. Honestly, for me, I think the bigger thing is it's just a respect for the people who work for me, right? And out of that respect, it's wanting to do right by them. And so when I'm making decisions, I'm always taking that into consideration. And you're right; it does require a bit of forethought. Like, I can't just think about what's happening this moment. I have to think about it from an overall policy standpoint for the business, because to do anything else would be like having a family and picking your favorites. And I, you get nowhere with that in business. So I'm always looking at it. And sometimes, someone comes to me with a request of something special or particular that they want. And I've developed just a general, I think, discipline of doing my best to not make my decisions in silos. Because if you start to make exceptions to like the established, not necessarily rules, but just kind of culture of the place, then for one person, then those exceptions start to become the rules, and then no one has a clear idea of where you're heading and where you're going. And so I just try to be clear up front, and so it means I have to have good forethought, because if I'm trying to take people along for the ride in this business, it's important. If you're going for a ride somewhere, you want to know where you're going, right? You
Yeah.
want to know the pathway, particularly that you're on. And the only way you can do that, in my opinion, is just to be very clear, to communicate and make a commitment to communicating. And then, allowing people the opportunity to understand, as you're, moving a business like this forward, and which is easier said than done sometimes, because in a small business, in an entrepreneurial business, things move fast, but that's just kind of what I have to do. And that's been really helpful to have had established that already, so that now we are in a more difficult time frame and situation where all businesses are adjusting. I know that my team trusts me. I know that they understand that I'm always, if anyone can navigate this, they will ride along with me, because they know I'm going to do my best, not only for me, but by them. And so it's made it a little bit easier to adjust to the times. And so I'm a firm believer in that. And I was long before I started my business. And before I started this, as I was still working in, my previous life, I was managing people, and I just made it that was my discipline, and that was my habit, and it paid off there. So I was determined to bring that same attitude here, and it's really worked for me.
Oh yeah, definitely. And so how has it changed, because you were originally used to sort of like the 9 to 5 work, and so now you're
Hmm.
in this sort of open landscape of entrepreneurship and business ownership, and you write your own hours and you sign your own checks. So like, how is it sort of like navigating or going from structure to no structure?
It means I work too darn much, and and the stuff is always on my mind, and there's always something I can do, and always something that I want to work on. So I've had to become, and I'll tell you, up until about a year and a half ago, I was not that good at what I'm about to say. I started to develop a little bit of structure for myself, and some self care first. because I could work nonstop. There's always something to do. There's always an email to answer. There's always an employee to, to respond to. There's always a supplier that needs something. There's always, always, always something. So I've just worked hard to put as much structure around this as I can, and to recognize my buckets, those things that are, urgent that I have to do now, those things that are important and urgent, but, that they're not due for a while. And so rather than trying to do it all now or procrastinating and doing none now, I've just learned to kind of pace myself, if you will.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's the only way. That's the only way I'm able to deal with it all.
Yeah, and I think that that's something that for me I had to get used to as well. And I don't think really many people really think about it, because you very, very rarely do you ever have to go beyond the point of, oh, do I have the skill set to do it and do I have the resources to do it? People don't really
Mm-hmm.
think about, oh, do I actually have the time to do this amongst all the other things that I'm trying to do?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's as somebody that creates stuff, quite often like come up with an idea, then just see it all the way through. You only have the bandwidth to do so many of those at once without
Yeah.
having to sacrifice.
Yeah. Right. And right. Exactly. If you're going to do them well or to the best of your ability, that's absolutely right.
Yeah, and so with it, what would you what sort of advice would you give for somebody that's looking to, somebody that has an interest in the sciences, but aren't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily privy to wanting to be a doctor, but also want to like pursue other paths? What would you suggest that they sort of like look into or consider when they're like looking for something?
You know, I would say, and this was actually the bit of advice that I got from my dad when I had graduated from college and said, yeah, I'm not going to med school, but was still kind of uncertain what I was going to do, and how I ended up landing in product development is, I remember him sitting me down and he said to me, because I was still kind of, I think, staunchly looking at what I could do with sciences in a very, very narrow landscape and through a very narrow lens. And he said to me, Paula, the people that I know in this world that are most successful are those who are open to opportunities. You cannot close your mind off, because there might be something out there that could really be amazing for you. But if you're only willing to, look at particular types, positions by title in particular areas, are you really exploring all that you can do? So he just invited me to just open my mind to opportunities. And it was because of that, I started to just look at and research on my own all the different things, all of that I could do with a science degree and where it comes into application. And I ended up networking. And it was through that I ended up learning about this whole concept of product development. And once I got in, this light bulb just came on. So I credit him for sitting me down at my honorary 21-year-old self and telling me, just be open, right? Yeah, I know you want this fabulous life and you're going to do all these things, and that's great. You'll do it. And just because the first position may not be the exact title you were looking for or the exact company you were looking for, it doesn't mean you can't get there. It just may mean you're taking it. It's a pathway. You're taking it one step at a time. So just to be open, to be honest.
Yeah, because I feel like it goes hand in hand with be careful what you wish for, because
Oh yeah,
quite often what you get is what you asked for. You just didn't expect it to come this way, and you didn't expect it to look this way.
yeah, yeah. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I still find myself saying that sometimes, to be honest with you, Stephen, especially on days when it's really tough.
Yeah.
And I'm looking around like, okay, girl, you wanted this. You got what you asked for.
Yeah. Yeah. It's you always people tend to look at sort of the end goal or what the finished product is, but they tend to overlook all the little details that are very influential in your process to get to that. And so,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
when you think about it or when you sit down, you be like, well, this does make sense, and I do have to go through this, but it's like, dang,
Hmm.
I wish there was another, I wish there was an easier way.
Yeah. Right. 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 That was another thing my dad used to always say is, and I know a lot of parents said this: if it was easy, everyone would do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Whatever.
Yep.
But he's right.
Exactly. But I'm stuck here doing it right now.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a. I always look at it as a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
I'm in animation, and so when I talk to people
Very
about
cool.
animation, it
Hmm.
they it doesn't the amount of time it takes to do animation doesn't make sense for somebody that just watches animation, because I
Yeah.
think for me, and how much it costs.
Yeah.
And so for me, if I were to animate something in full color, uh, it would take me about 3 to 4 hours per second of animation.
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting there just cranking it out, spending the time, but after 2 weeks worth of work, I'll have maybe 10 seconds worth of stuff or 20 seconds worth of stuff to show. And
Yeah. It's that's but if you think about the level of I think about it from just the level of detailed work that you're doing. Both my technical mind working, but my senior in high school is an aspiring animator, and so I think you guys have the patience of gold.
yes, yes.
Because like you said, it just it takes a lot. I mean, and he's barely getting started, so I can't even imagine.
Oh man, and it's one of the things I think, being in the space of being an entrepreneur, having a small business, pursuing sort of the creative feats and everything, and you know how it is in
Hmm.
LA, and being from the Bay Area, for me, it's Portland is one of the funny places where you could get a lot done in those areas and not have to
Yeah,
pay an arm and a leg or have to
yeah,
sacrifice relationships and stuff to pursue it, because I mean
yeah,
this is at least for animation and like comic illustration and a few other industries, this is like LA for them, you know.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely, it's a good place to be for that for sure.
Yeah. And so to kind of wrap up, are there any amazing things, new things that like you're excited about? I know the kind of the shift with the whole COVID-19 thing has definitely opened some opportunities, but are there anything
Mhm.
else?
No, you know what? I'm excited about um, I'm excited about what I've been able to help through, not just my leadership, but through my team to build here. Because I feel like it's a testament that, yeah, we'll get through this tough time, but there are some amazing opportunities for us on the other side, things that we are already working on, new opportunities that I know are going to come our way. And I think, if anything, what this moment is really not teaching, but maybe reinforcing for me is just because we are flexible and adaptable, I know that those opportunities that we're going to be looking at in the future, we're going to be well prepared to at least tackle those journeys. Not that we know what they're going to be or that we know that exact pathway, but we've been able to navigate our way through a pretty tough and competitive industry to this date, and we're finding a way to make it through this pandemic. If we can do those two things, then I feel like our options are boundless. So I'm just going to keep pushing us forward.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. And so, one of the things that I'm like starting to do with this podcast, albeit because it's the Black Rose PDX podcast, and it's
Mm-hmm.
focused around, really the Black community and really a lot of the movers and shakers of it, is
Yeah.
in Portland, what is the blackest thing that you have done?
In Portland, the blackest thing that I have done. Hmm. Um, that's actually an interesting question. Because unless we're talking about, my husband and I throwing our own backyard barbecues, which we tend to do a lot, or fish fries. I'll tell you one of the funniest things we did in Portland is we did our own all white party where we were playing croquet, and it was
just like some just straight bougie blackness.
Exactly. It was actually kind of funny to see us all out in the park. It was pretty hilarious.
Oh man, yeah. It's Portland will bring out the blackness that nobody knew existed or thought died like 30 years ago.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yep. It was funny.
Okay.
I think we need to do another one of those once we get past this whole social distancing. I think I need to throw another party like that. It would be fun.
Oh yeah, definitely. Hey, let me know because I'm trying to,
all right.
I'm trying to let loose, especially after this.
Okay, great.
Oh,
yeah, we'll have a big party.
Again, I want to give another shout out to the Soul District Business Association and Flossom Media for helping me put this on. I'm your host, Stephen Christian. I mixed and mastered this podcast. I also did all the interviews. And if you see any of the stuff on YouTube, I put all that stuff together as well. With all the social distancing things right now, I'm producing this right out of my home studio. So if you have a chance, make sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Medium at PDX Black Rose, which is PDX BLACKROSE. And if you're on Patreon, hit us up on there. We would love your support. If you don't do anything else, definitely rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher. And on top of that, be sure to share this with your friends. The purpose of this podcast is to highlight the movers and shakers in Portland that are doing things in the Black community. And by supporting this podcast, you're supporting the community as a whole. So with that being said, thank you for your time, and I'll catch you on the flip side. The intro song is brought to you by Andy Stokes, and the outro song is brought to you by Spring Gang from Epidemic Sound.